key. CrestWhiteSmile.ca.
AutoIQ.com is a revolutionary way to buy a car, but with so many benefits. How do we show it all?
We shouldn't actually someone buying a car any way they want it. Online, from wherever they are, whatever time they want, deliver to them, or show them picking it up from one of our stores.
I don't think so.
Okay, what if we spend the entire budget on a really good song?
Online or in store, buy your next car with AutoIQ.com.
Now is your time to build it, to tell that story, to care, to innovate, advocate, dare, to apply, to accept the challenge. Seneca, challenge accepted.
Check this out.
It hasn't been such a long time since people first started shopping online, and it was easy to keep up with the clicks. Little by little by little by more, the clicks added up to be more than the stores, and e-tailers worked harder than ever before because they had to keep up with the clicks. No time for borders, got to stay in control, to stay in the flow and continue to grow. But we'll help you keep up with the clicks.
The holidays are back, and so is Waikido's big sale, just in time to get your home ready for the holidays. Right now, save up to 25% on all blinds, shades, drapes, and shutters. Brighten up your home for the holidays. Lines to go. We make it easy.
On CP24 tonight, Premier Doug Ford refuses to apologize for comments he made about immigrants. We'll have a reaction coming up.
Ontario Science Advisory Table says a vaccine mandate for hospital staff would reduce the risk of staff shortage.
And a gang that kidnapped 17 members of a U.S.-based missionary group is demanding $1 million U.S. ransom per person. The White House says it's working to get the hostages out. One of the 17 is a Canadian. I'm Rashmi Mayer.
And I'm Colin DeMello. This is CP24 Tonight. A vaccine policy is coming to the House of Commons. Effective November 22nd, people have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 to be allowed within the House of Commons precinct. The mandate applies to all MPs, their staff, employees, media, and visitors. Those with medical exemptions have to provide a negative COVID-19 test before entering. Ontario reported 328 new cases of COVID-19 and 4 more deaths today. This is the second straight day the province has logged fewer than 400 new infections. Labs processed more than 20,000 tests yesterday, bringing the positivity rate down to 1.5%. There are at least 260 people in Ontario hospitals with the virus. 159 are in intensive care units. Peel Region logged 60 new cases today. 52 were reported in Toronto. 20 new cases were confirmed in York Region, 10 in Halton, and 4 in Durham Region. The Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table is responding to Premier Doug Ford's questions about mandatory vaccines for healthcare workers. Last week, Ford asked hospital CEOs and healthcare providers for their input on a province-wide mandatory vaccination policy. In a lengthy letter to the Premier today, the table outlined 3 reasons why it believes vaccines should be required for hospital staff. The table says it is important to protect vulnerable patients from COVID-19, to ensure that hospitals can continue to function, and to protect the health and safety of staff. It goes on to say that requiring healthcare workers to be vaccinated against certain communicable diseases is evidence-based and protects the public.
Ontario's health minister says the province will be ready if and when Health Canada approves Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for use in young children. Pfizer formally asked for its shot to be approved for kids aged 5 to 11 yesterday. The company has already submitted clinical trial data for its child-sized dose, which is about 1/3 the size. The company says the results are comparable to the results for the 16 to 25 age group. Health Minister Christine Elliott says planning is underway on the rollout for younger kids.
We are working actively with our public health units to determine a rollout for that vaccine when it is approved by Health Canada, of course. And we will be ready as soon as it's approved to be able to distribute it and have it available for children across the entire province. So we are actively working on that file now.
Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh says it's not clear how long it'll take Health Canada to make that decision on approving Pfizer's shot for 5 to 11-year-olds.
It's really hard to know. I mean, when we look at Health Canada's track record, they've been pretty quick in processing data. When we look back at the initial submissions of Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, they actually had teams that were working in shifts 24 hours a day because the urgency was so great. And in general, I think they've done a very reasonable job throughout the pandemic.
Still to come tonight, 17 missionaries who were abducted in Haiti over the weekend are being held on a multi-million-dollar ransom by a gang that wants $1 million per hostage. We'll have more on this coming up.
A 17-year-old girl has died after being struck by a vehicle in Scarborough this morning. It happened around 11:45 this morning near Birchmount and Danforth. Paramedics took the girl to hospital via an emergency run, but she later died from her injuries. The circumstances surrounding the collision have not been released by police, but they say the driver of the vehicle involved remained at the scene. Police confirmed the victim was a student at nearby Birchmount Collegiate.
The driver of the vehicle did remain on scene and assisted officers in the investigation. They were transported to a local hospital for precautions, but they were obviously in shock and upset by what had taken place. So again, we're appealing to the public for any assistance they can provide us. We do know that some people did stop and help render aid to this young woman, which is very much appreciated. Some others tried to stop traffic to protect those people and that young woman. So again, we're always very appreciative of anybody that stops to try and help.
Police say the investigation will determine if any charges will be laid. One person is in custody after a stabbing in Brampton. This happened just before 5:30 this afternoon at McMurtry Avenue and Railroad Street. That's near Main and Queen. Peel police say a 41-year-old man was taken to hospital with serious injuries, while a 43-year-old man fled on foot but has been arrested. Emergency crews are on the scene of a collision in Brampton. The collision between an SUV and a motorcycle happened just before 4:30 this afternoon at Glidden Road and Heart Lake South. That's in the Steeles and 410 area. Police say the motorcyclist is conscious and being transported to a trauma center. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of the collision. Police are also investigating a two-vehicle crash involving a school bus in Milton. This happened at around 3:30 this afternoon on Appleby Line north of Steeles. Investigators say it appears the bus was attempting to pass a car when it lost control and ended up in a ditch. Two students and the driver were on board, but luckily no injuries have been reported.
Emergency crews were called to a two-alarm house fire this evening. Chopper 24 was over the scene on Symington Avenue just before 6 p.m. Toronto Fire arrived at the home to find the attic on fire. They say work was being done on the roof, and that's what sparked the flames. It was quickly brought under control. No injuries were reported. There were no injuries following a 17-hour standoff in St. Mary's. Officers were sent to a home in the town northeast of London to apprehend a man under the Mental Health Act. Upon arrival, the man threatened officers with a knife. Police elected not to go inside the home and instead began a lengthy negotiation. 17 hours later, the situation was de-escalated. The man was safely taken to a hospital. A vigil was held this afternoon for a couple killed in a crash in High Park last week. The event took place at Parkside Drive and Spring Road, just north of the Queensway. This vigil was held the same day as a visitation for the victims. Fatima and Valdemar Avila were killed last Tuesday when their car was hit from behind on Parkside Drive as they sat in traffic. 3 other people were injured, including one who was in serious condition.
There are a number of different things we need to do. We've begun to try to narrow the streets by putting parking onto the streets so that cars don't have as much room and don't pick up as much speed. We're talking about trying to get sidewalks on part of the street here. we're trying to get the speed reduced. I've been in conversations with city staff to make this 40 instead of 50. But also, it's a plea to everybody who drives a car. I know you're in a hurry to get where you're going, but remember, you're driving through somebody's neighborhood.
They need more than just signage. The street, they think they can put up some community safety zone signs, and that'll somehow deter people from speeding, but it doesn't work that way. The street is clearly designed in such a way that great speeds can be achieved, and that's what happened with the accident the other day. How does someone die in a vehicle accident on a 50-kilometer-per-hour road?
71-year-old Valdemar was pronounced dead at the crash scene. 69-year-old Fatima, who was a longtime salon owner, died in hospital. Her daughter tells CTV News the couple was on their way to pick up a prescription at the time of the crash. No charges have been announced.
Coming up tonight, a gang in Haiti demanding $17 million U.S. in exchange for the 17 missionaries they abducted over the weekend. 1 Canadian, 5 children are among the hostages. We're going to discuss next.
Next time on Canada's Drag Race. You're all-star in the original Canada's Drag Race Rusical under the big tie. Lord, you gave me all my 80s fantasies.
And then that runway look.
How dare you? The gumpster. Oh my goodness.
Canada's Drag Race. New episode Thursday. Only on Crave. Subscribe now at crave.ca. Brought to you in part by Neutrogena All-in-One Makeup Removing Cleansing Wipes.
Get paid more ways. Payments made easy with Intuit QuickBooks.
It doesn't matter who you're taking or where you're going. Your tires won't last forever. And now is the perfect time for new ones. Buy 3 tires and get the 4th free. Visit your Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram dealer for details.
See you Saturday.
Here we go.
How doers get more done.
A multi-million-dollar ransom for 17 missionaries that they're holding captive. The hostages are affiliated with Ohio's Christian Aid Ministries. 1 Canadian is among them, the rest are American, and 5 of them are children aged 3, 6, 14, 15, and 1 just 8 months old.
Haiti's justice minister says the powerful 400 Maozo gang kidnapped the group near an orphanage outside the capital, Port-au-Prince, over the weekend. They're now demanding $1 million U.S. per hostage, for a total of $17 million. To discuss the situation in Haiti, we welcome back to CP24 tonight Gilles Rivard, Canada's ambassador to Haiti during the 2010 earthquake, Rahul Singh, executive director with Global Medic, and Kevin Edmonds, assistant professor of Caribbean Studies at the University of Toronto. We appreciate all of you making time for CP24 tonight. Mr. Rivard, your thoughts on what's happening in Haiti? There is a rise in kidnappings. There is a rise in the demands for ransom. How successful, based on your experience, how successful are these kidnappings in getting that ransom?
Well, you know, nature's abhors vacuum, and there is a political vacuum in Haiti. And what we see here is just the result of a lack of governance for so many years. So street gangs are now, prevail almost everywhere in the neighborhood of Port-au-Prince. And what we just saw in the last couple of days is a result of an increase in kidnapping, and now 17 people, 17 foreigners, 17 million people. That's just, was something we could have never expected a couple of years ago.
Raul Singh with Global Medic. I mean, you often are ready whenever there's a disaster in any part of the world, and especially Haiti is one of those places where Global Medic has had a presence over the last number of years. Can you tell me how your crews deal with any security threats on the ground?
We've run over 230 ops in 78 countries. We've worked in Haiti a dozen times. The heightened security is very hard to navigate. In Haiti, it's like working basically in a war zone, an active war zone. So there's a number of things that we would do from a security protocol point of view for all of our teams to keep them safe. You know, that some of that involves curfews and checkpoints and where we're going, and then how much information we're sharing with all the other agencies about what roads are open. But, you know, we've had expats in there recently installing water purification units. As you know, there was an earthquake out in the western part of the island, and, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of people in need of assistance. So when we put in technical teams and provide that assistance, we're so mindful of their safety and their security, and yet we could take every precaution and end up, you know, in a situation like this. So thankfully our people are safe, but there are literally millions of people in need in Haiti of humanitarian assistance, and instances like this, you know, they'll silence that opportunity for people to come in and deliver assistance because it makes it that much harder to operate.
I was reading about some blogs where missionaries said in the past that they would eventually work with these gangs to try to better the communities around them in Haiti. If they're so prevalent, Kevin, there are gangs, there's crime, and there's help, and there's hope, but I mean, is there any governance at this point?
I'm really glad the ambassador spoke and brought up a couple of points here, as well as the point that my colleague that just spoke about insecurity, is that the political vacuum that exists didn't start with the assassination of President Moise in July. It's actually something that's been going on a long time, and I think that this is something that goes back to the humanitarian aid situation that happened after the earthquake in 2010. Something that we don't really talk about is Canada's direct involvement in helping to cultivate this political crisis that Haiti is now seeing, and that has resulted partly in the kidnapping of these 17 missionaries in Haiti. We can all likely remember the earthquake in 2010, and Haiti was going through an election at that time where the incumbent government was not trusted to hand over power to what was seen as the next in line. And Canada actually intervened in this election with the help of the Organization of American States to put in a candidate that they thought would actually be beneficial to the reconstruction. Perhaps it was well-meaning. But when we talk about kidnappers and gangsters, Michel Martelly, who was the president who was put in, was a self-admitted paramilitary and gangster. He admitted to being in the Makuch. It was Canada's political choice to back him, as well as the United States' decision to back him, in an election in which 13 political parties were banned, and there was no broad-based legitimacy or consensus that this was the actual real president in Haiti. So that kickstarted, you can imagine, and that individual, that president, that political party that was put in power in that electoral coup in 2010 has been accused of stealing over $2.4 billion. Right? So when we talk about the kidnappings and stuff, this is incredibly important. We need to talk about the context in which Canada, which we can control, has been contributing to in Haiti and the damage that has happened. Because these are the symptoms of it. We need to address the causes. And Canada can do that, but we have to have an honest conversation about our historical record in the country.
Mr. Rivard, I mean, we're obviously looking at a unique situation here in which children are involved. I mean, the United States has already signaled that, you know, they don't often negotiate with people who will take people hostage, because obviously that gives others the incentive to do this same thing. Do you think, though, that with, you know, an 8-month-old involved here, there is more pressure, more of a drive to find some kind of a resolution? And do you feel like, you know, this will be a very quiet kind of effort to get these missionaries out of there?
Well, I agree with you that most of the time countries do not negotiate, and Canada, as the United States, we usually don't negotiate. Now, you raise a very interesting point here about the fact that we have a baby of 8 months old, and there is a sort of urgency here. What I would say is that we have to forget, don't focus too much on the $17 million. usually these gangs, are looking for $20,000 per hostage. So the fact that they ask for $1 million, which is 50 times higher than normal, it's probably an indication that they kidnapped foreigners. In my view, they open a Pandora box here by kidnapping such a large group of foreigners. It may trigger a reaction from United States and Canada and also the Asian government, I hope, so that they take the right measures to avoid that kind of situation. That being said, of course, there is negotiation. FBI agents are on ground in Haiti. I'm sure that our ambassador is in touch with RCMP and the Global Affairs Canada to make sure that the Canadian kidnapped is also get the same treatment than others. As for the negotiation, I'm not part of it, but I can tell you they probably worked very hard to find a very good solution, considering that 8-month baby that has been kidnapped, which is totally disgusting in my view, that these street gangs get to that point.
Raul, is it possible to make Haiti safer for those going in to try to help?
A couple of quick points. Listen, the entire history of Haiti has been about people that came to power and that were backed by gangs and angry young men with guns. If you think of the Tonton Macoute with baby dog Papa Doc Duvalier and then his son, you think of Aristide and his Rapakaka, and then you look at the gangs that have splintered out now, and it's not just Katsam and Oiseau that are in the north and the east. There's G9, there's a number of groups, and the problem now is that aid workers are a commodity. The Haitian population is a commodity. They're being abducted, held for money, and the story is entirely about the amount of money and these 17, folks that are kidnapped, which is awful. But the story really should be about the millions that are insecure, lack clean water, need humanitarian assistance, and are stuck, literally held hostage by these gangs and this basic, non-state armed actors groups that are holding them hostage and the country hostage. The country needs an intervention by a global force. Realistically, it's going to be hard to imagine that President Biden doesn't react in a hard way, given the apparent show of weakness in Afghanistan. So I can't see that not occurring in Haiti. They'll have to resolve the situation. I'm very confident that the people will be released and it'll come to a resolution. This is a business transaction to these gangs. This is the 650th kidnapping in Haiti this year. That's up 100% from last year. There's been 29 expatriates this year kidnapped. So this is a pretty significant issue. But in order to move the country forward, they need boots on the ground. They need to reestablish law and order. They need to take away guns from the angry young men, and they need to get humanitarian aid out to the people that need it.
All right. Well, that's a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for this. Former Ambassador Gilles Rivard, Raul Singh, Kevin Edmonds, thank you so much for your conversation on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.